A young girl needed a job. She was able to find a job as a babysitter in a big, faraway, old house. The parents of the children went out that night to see a movie and left the children with their nanny. When it was late, the nurse took the children to bed, made them sleep, and then went downstairs to watch TV. When he suddenly heard the phone ring, when he answered the phone, all he heard was heavy breathing and a man's voice asking him, "Are you intruding on the children?" Scared, he put the phone down and tried to convince himself that it was just someone playing a joke on him. He went back to watching TV, but about 15 minutes later the phone rang again. When he picked up the phone, he heard a terrible laugh on the other end. Then the same voice asked, "Why didn't you check on the kids?" The nurse slammed the phone down. The poor girl was scared and immediately called the police. The police station operator told the nurse that if the man called again, he should try to prolong the conversation. This would give the police time to trace the call. A few minutes later, the phone rang for the third time, and when the nurse answered it, she heard heavy breathing again. "You need to check on the kids," said the voice on the other end of the line. The nurse laughed at him for a long time and spoke to prolong the phone. He hung up again, and almost immediately, it rang again. This time the operator of the police station shouted, "Get out of the house now. The calls are from upstairs." The nurse dropped the phone in fear and suddenly heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Without pausing and with incredible speed, he ran away from the house. Just as he closed the door behind him, he saw a man's hand in front of the glass. He screamed, and just then he saw a police car and ran down the street. Police searched the house and found two children upstairs hiding in a closet and crying. And in the parents' bedroom, they found a bloody axe on the floor next to the upstairs phone. The window was open and the curtains were swaying in the breeze. There was no sign of the madman who had called. He had fled at night when the police arrived and had failed to carry out his horrifying plan to kill the two children and the poor nurse. There were two young boys named Trevor and Will. They spent most of their summer vacations in different parts of the city looking for things to do. One warm August night, the boys were sitting on a fence by the main road. There was a cornfield on the side of the road. Suddenly, Trevor saw something on the ground. In the dark, it was difficult to recognize, and he thought it was a strange animal. He called his friend and pointed towards the strange face. He said to himself that maybe he can see it. He wasn't sure, but the mysterious thing looked like a human. The boys raised their heads and looked carefully. That strange creature came out of the darkness and slowly reached the edge of the earth. Trevor and Will looked at each other, surprised. "What was that?" Willie asked. "I don't know," Trevor replied. Trevor and Will tried to run away, but the creature caught up to them earlier and placed a hand on Trevor's shoulder. He screamed in horror. The decaying skin on its face was peeled off in places, and the bone underneath was exposed. For a moment, he just stared at Trevor in silence. Then, suddenly, he grabbed her arm. Trevor felt its nails dig into his flesh as they came out of his claws. The two boys jumped over the fence and ran down the road, screaming in terror until they reached their homes. They tried to tell their parents and friends about what they had seen that night, but no one believed them. When Trevor woke up the next morning, the scratches on his arm were still there. After a few days, he got worse and worse. Trevor fell ill and his parents took him to the doctor. After examining his arm, the doctor told the boy that it was infected and gave him pills to take. Unfortunately, the conditions of terror worsened. The infection spread to his entire arm, and it wasn't long before the flesh rotted away. He was taken to the hospital, but the doctors could not do anything. There was no treatment. The infection spread throughout his body. It seemed that nothing could be done anymore. He was getting worse and worse every day. His parents could only sit by his side and cry as they watched their beloved son slowly rot before their eyes. On the day Trevor finally died, Will came to the hospital to see him. When the boy entered the hospital room and saw Trevor in bed, he panicked. His friend looked just like that horrible creature. The tired and worried old man was returning from the farm, and in the darkness of the night and the howling of the wind, Cartoon was thinking about how to bring him a doctor from the city. He is very sick and needs a doctor. It was a long and difficult way from their village to the city, and he could not walk. It was in these thoughts that the flickering light of a car suddenly turned on the dark road, broke his train of thought, gave warmth to the old man's eyes, and revived hope in his heart. The car stopped near the old man. The old man couldn't see well, so he went closer, but he didn't find anyone inside the car. He was surprised. He stepped back when suddenly he felt something like a carcass under his feet. He pulled his leg back and looked down at his feet. In the light of the car, he noticed a body with his hand under the old man's leg. His face was bloody and unrecognizable. The old man did not know what was happening, but he thought to himself that it was better to leave the body in the car than to find someone. But as soon as he put the body in the car started and left. The old man was left with a lot of unanswered questions. The old man was lost in his thoughts for a while. He suddenly realized that cartoon was very bad. I can't leave him alone for too long, and he steps off the ground and leaves the road. He was passing through the forest. The sound of the awake owl and the howling of the wind were mixed. The old man was thinking, how could this happen? He attributed these events to his fatigue and reached the hut. The light of the hut was sticking out of the door. The old man said to himself, why did Khotun leave the door open at this time of night? Has it gone somewhere? When he entered the hut, the sound of screams filled the hut as if someone was asking for help. Bloody handprints were carved on the wall as if someone had drawn them out of resistance. The old man immediately went to the lady's room. When he opened the door of the room, he saw the room empty and blooded. He searched the whole house for him, but he did not find him. At first, he thought that it was a fantasy, but then he realized that it was real and that the body he found on the side of the road was Khotun's body. My older cousin bought a house and renovated it. The house was built in 1870 and has not been lived in since the early 1990s, when the owner, a doctor, died. The same doctor's office and pharmacy were located behind the house. There was a caretaker's house next to the house. One of the doctor's sons proposed marriage to the young janitor's daughter, but the doctor refused, and as a result, the poor girl hanged herself at the bottom of the hall stairs. At that time, it was a custom that after the death of each person in the house, they would put a dark cloth on all the mirrors and clocks for a while so that the spirits of the dead would not get stuck in them. But the doctor was not aware of that custom. My cousin, who was very pleased with the decoration of the house, did not change the model of furniture, paintings, and mirrors. When we went to visit there with my little brother and other cousins during the holidays, a beautiful mirror in front of the staircase caught my attention. While watching the mirror closely, I noticed some fingerprints on the mirror. I tried to remove the stains with the sleeve of my clothes, but to my surprise and disbelief, I realized that the fingerprints were on the mirror and could not be removed. This was not the only strange and non-trivial phenomenon there. When we were sitting in the hall and we were all together, we could hear the soft sound of music and the light footsteps of a woman or a man. Although it was not clear what was being said, in any case, it was not an angry voice. I can truly say that the noises were very pleasant and pleasant. Whenever I went towards the sounds would suddenly stop. But at the top of the stairs, I really felt the presence of a certain malevolence, not only in one part but in all parts of the upper part of the house. Although I love both my cousin and his new home, I only go there when I have to. Honestly, I am afraid of the top floor there. I am a fearless and brave 16-year-old girl. I am never afraid of riding dangerous aerial trains, and I am happy to watch crime and horror movies, but I admit that I am afraid of it. My mother still doesn't believe me and thinks I'm crazy or delusional, even though she hears footsteps and sees fingerprints in the same mirror.